The village lay hidden in the shadow of misty hills, where the wind carried the scent of pine and rain, and the rivers whispered secrets to the rocks they kissed. Life in this small cluster of homes was simple and quiet, measured by the rising sun and the rhythm of the seasons. But for Alara, every day was a careful balance of survival and care. She lived with her aging mother in a modest cottage at the edge of the village, tending a small garden, chopping firewood, and keeping the home warm and safe. The villagers rarely wandered far beyond the paths of their lives. They feared the forest that stretched beyond the hills, calling it the Shadow Woods, a place where travelers sometimes vanished, swallowed by darkness and wind. Alara had heard stories, but she had never feared the world beyond her door. Her world was small, but it was hers. One evening, as storm clouds gathered like a wall across the sky, Alara was at her door, checking her shutters. The wind howled, and the first drops of rain began to fall. A flash of lightning revealed a dark figure moving through the wind and rain, stumbling toward the village. Alara squinted, her heart quickening. Travelers rarely dared the storm. "Who's there?" she called, her voice trembling slightly. The figure stopped, as if considering whether to answer. Then, coughing and dripping water, he spoke in a low, calm voice. "Please, I mean no harm. I seek shelter for the night." Alara hesitated. The storm was fierce, but the figure's tone carried a strange weight of authority, of quiet confidence. She could not tell if he was injured or simply exhausted. Compassion rose within her, stronger than fear. "Come inside," she said. "You can rest by the fire. I have food, too." The man nodded and stepped forward. His cloak was soaked, and his boots left mud in the doorway. His face was partly hidden under a hood. But Alara noticed the sharpness of his eyes, the way he studied everything around him. He moved with careful grace, as if every step mattered. Once inside, Alara led him to the hearth and offered him a blanket. He accepted, sitting in silence as the firelight flickered across his features. His hands were strong and pale, his fingers long and deliberate. Despite his exhaustion, he carried himself with a presence that made the small room feel larger, more significant. "I am Alara," she said, returning to the fireplace. "You can rest. Eat something, if you like." He glanced at her, his gaze steady, and said simply, "Thank you, Alara. I am weary." His voice was calm, but beneath it, she felt a hidden tension, a story untold. Alara brought a simple meal of bread and cheese, setting it on the table before him. He ate quietly, his eyes occasionally flicking to hers, watching her with a quiet curiosity. He did not speak of where he had come from, nor did he ask much about the village, yet his presence seemed to fill the room, and Alara felt a strange pull, a sense of importance in simply being near him. As the storm raged outside, the wind shaking the shutters and the rain hammering the roof, Alara sat near the fire, attempting to keep her composure. She asked the man questions, but he spoke sparingly, giving only hints of his knowledge. He mentioned cities far beyond the hills, lands she had only heard of in stories, and events that seemed both distant and urgent. "You know much for a traveler," she said, her curiosity breaking through her nervousness. He smiled faintly, a hint of sadness in his eyes. "I have seen much, more than most should ever see, and I carry burdens heavier than the storms outside these walls." Alara did not know what to say. There was something in his tone that suggested danger, yet also vulnerability. She felt her heart beat faster. A strange mixture of fear and admiration. Hours passed. The storm showed no signs of ceasing, and the traveler remained silent for long stretches, staring into the fire, lost in thought. Alara, too, felt a pull into the quiet mystery of him, her mind wandering over the few words he had spoken. Who was this man who walked alone through the storm, carrying some invisible weight? Eventually, the man spoke again, his voice almost a whisper. "The world outside, it is not kind. People hide truths, and those who are honest are often the ones who suffer the most." Alara nodded, unsure how to respond. His words felt heavy, like a shadow stretching across her mind. She wanted to comfort him, to offer warmth beyond the fire. But she did not know if such gestures were safe, or if he would even accept them. "You are kind," he said suddenly, his gaze meeting hers. "Many would have turned me away." Ilara felt a shiver, though not from the cold. The weight of his words lingered in the room, filling it with an unspoken connection. She realized that in offering shelter, she had stepped into a story far larger than herself. Though she did not yet understand the role she would play, the storm continued through the night. Lightning flashed across the sky, illuminating the figure of the traveler as he moved to the window, watching the dark forest beyond the village. Ilara could not see his face clearly, but she sensed a tension, a restlessness that would not be satisfied by safety alone. "Do you fear the storm?" she asked quietly. He turned to her, his expression unreadable. "No. It is the calm that I fear more. The quiet moments carry truths that are harder to face than any wind or rain." Ilara did not understand, but she felt the weight of his words. There was a depth to this man, a hidden life filled with danger and responsibility. Yet he shared it here, in her small cottage, with someone he barely knew. As the fire burned low, he finally lay down, covering himself with the blanket. Ilara watched him for a moment, then turned away to check the shutters again. The storm's howl pressed against the walls. But inside, the room was quiet, yet charged with unspoken tension. Hours later, just before the first light of dawn crept through the windows, the traveler rose. He moved to the door silently, as if aware that the night was ending, and the world outside demanded a reckoning. "Ilara," he said softly, almost a whisper. "Thank you for your kindness. I must leave before the village is fully awake. Some truths cannot be hidden for long." Ilara felt her chest tighten. Will I see you again?" she asked, her voice barely audible. He paused, his hand on the door. For a moment, she thought she saw a flicker of a smile, a glimmer of something tender and human, beneath the weight of his presence. "Perhaps," he said, and then he was gone, swallowed by the mist and the early morning rain. Ilara stood by the doorway for a long time after, watching the empty path where he had disappeared. The storm had passed, leaving the village in a soft, wet silence. Birds began to stir, and the smell of damp earth filled the air. Yet for Ilara, the world felt changed. The memory of the traveler, his voice, his eyes, and the strange pull of his presence lingered in her mind. She did not know who he truly was, perhaps just a wanderer, perhaps something far more, but she could not shake the feeling that her life had been altered in a single night, in a quiet cottage by the fire, in the heart of a storm, and somewhere in the morning mist, a hidden truth waited to reveal itself. A secret that would pull her into a world of kings, shadows, and destinies far greater than she had ever imagined. Cliffhanger. As the sun rose, illuminating the village rooftops with a gentle light, Ilara caught a glimpse of a golden insignia pressed faintly into the mud, where he had walked, a mark she could not yet understand, but one that hinted the man she had sheltered was no ordinary traveler. Her heart pounded. Whoever he was, he would return. And when he did, her life would never be the same. Days passed after the stormy night, yet the memory of the stranger lingered in Ilara's mind like a shadow that refused to fade. She found herself glancing at the road beyond her village, as though he might appear at any moment, carrying the weight of mystery and authority in his silent presence. Though she tried to resume her simple life, her thoughts often wandered back to him the way his eyes had held both danger and warmth, the calm strength that had seemed to fill her small cottage. Ilara could not explain why, but a feeling of unease and anticipation settled over her. Something had shifted the moment she had let him in, and now, even the smallest sound, the rustle of leaves, the creak of a branch, made her heart beat faster. Meanwhile, the kingdom beyond the hills was restless. Rumors of a fugitive prince spread like wildfire, whispered in taverns, markets, and castle corridors alike. Many claimed he had vanished to avoid a deadly conspiracy, while others whispered that he had fled the royal palace, escaping assassins sent by enemies within his own court. No one knew where he had gone, only that his life and the fate of the kingdom was in grave danger. Ilara first heard the rumors from the villagers who had traveled to the market that morning. Some spoke of a man, wandering in strange lands, helping villagers and strangers alike. A shiver ran down her spine. Could it be the traveler she had sheltered? The pieces of memory, the subtle gestures, the quiet strength, the wisdom in his words began to align in her mind, as if sensing that she now understood more than she should. The stranger appeared at her door once again one evening. The air was cool, filled with the scent of wet earth and pine. He had traveled through the forest to reach her village, and his cloak was dry, the water from the storm gone, replaced by a faint trail of mud on his boots. His face was calm, but there was a tension in his posture that set her on edge. "Elara," he said softly, "I hoped you would not forget me." She looked at him, searching for the man she had known in the storm. His presence was commanding now, even more so than before. I did not forget," she replied, her voice barely steady. "But why are you here again? Is it safe for you?" He shook his head, his expression serious. "Safe? No. The world beyond your village is filled with eyes and shadows that seek me. But I have nowhere else to go, and I trust you." His words made her pulse quicken. She could sense that he carried not only danger but also the burden of something larger than life itself. She did not yet know who he truly was, yet a strange confidence settled over her, as if she had the power to help him in a way no one else could. "Come in," she said, stepping aside to let him enter. "You can rest." As before, inside, the fire crackled warmly, illuminating the small cottage with flickering light. The traveler removed his cloak and boots, revealing the precise, deliberate movements of someone trained and careful. He did not speak much at first, simply observing the room and the modest life it contained. Elara prepared a meal, her hands trembling slightly, and placed it before him. As they ate, he finally spoke, his voice quieter than before. "I am no simple traveler," he admitted. "You might have guessed it already." Elara felt a mixture of fear and curiosity. "Then, who are you?" she asked, her words cautious. He looked away toward the window, where the forest lay in quiet darkness. "I am someone who cannot remain in one place for long. Someone hunted by those who would see me dead. My life is filled with shadows and burdens, and yet, I have found a moment of light here. In this village, with you." Elara's heart tightened at his words. There was something in the way he spoke, a truth that could not be denied. "You trust me?" she whispered. He nodded slowly, his eyes meeting hers. "I do. More than I have trusted anyone in a long time." The fire's glow reflected in his eyes, revealing a depth that seemed almost infinite. Elara felt herself drawn into it, as if she could see not only his struggles but also the hope that lingered beneath the weight of his burdens. Night after night, they talked quietly. He shared pieces of his world, the dangers of court politics, the betrayal of allies, and the responsibilities that weighed heavily on him. Elara, in turn, spoke of her simple life, the struggles of her village, and her longing for something more, something beyond the hills and the forests. Though their bond grew, neither spoke of love. The tension between them simmered quietly, unspoken, yet undeniable. Elara could feel it in the way he looked at her, in the faint tremor in his voice when he spoke of his burdens. And he, too, seemed affected by her courage, her kindness, and the quiet strength she possessed, a strength that no crown or army could match. But danger was never far. The forest around the village was no longer safe. Shadows moved at its edges, and whispers of spies and assassins reached even the ears of villagers who thought themselves unnoticed. Kalen, the traveler, knew the hunters were closing in, yet he relied on Elara's insight and intuition to navigate their peril. One evening, as the sky burned with the reds and golds of sunset, a messenger arrived from the neighboring town. His horse was fast, his coat slick with rain from the late storm. He brought news that the royal court had sent scouts through the forests, seeking a man matching Kalen's description. "We must move," Kalen said quietly, his calm voice now carrying urgency. "It is no longer safe here. The walls of this village cannot protect us." Elara's heart pounded. Then, Where will we go? What should I do? He took her hand gently, a fleeting touch that sent a shiver down her spine. We will find a way. Together. We must be clever, careful, and fast. I cannot lose you, Elara. Not now, when you have become essential to my survival. The word essential lingered between them, heavy with meaning. Elara understood that her life, once quiet and simple, had become entwined with a destiny she could not yet fully grasp. That night, they prepared for travel. Kaelin dressed in garments that allowed him to move quickly, and Elara gathered what she could carry. The forest outside loomed dark and silent. But it was no longer just a place of fear, it was now a place of necessity. A path they had to navigate together. As they moved through the shadows of the trees, the tension between them grew. Each glance, each word, carried weight. Elara realized that she was not only aiding a stranger, but walking alongside a man whose fate was tied to kingdoms, conspiracies, and danger she could scarcely imagine. The night deepened, and a cold wind swept through the trees, carrying with it the whispers of approaching danger. Kaelin's hand tightened briefly around hers, a silent acknowledgement that the hunters were near, and that they must rely on trust and instinct to survive. Suddenly, the sound of branches snapping and leaves rustling reached them from the edge of the path. Shadows moved, figures cloaked and armed. Their intentions clear. Kaelin stepped forward, his movements fluid, precise, and powerful. The forest seemed to bend to his presence, every step measured, every motion deliberate. Elara froze, fear gripping her chest. But in that moment, she also saw the depth of his courage, the way he stood unwavering against threats that would terrify most men. Her admiration grew, mingled with a strange, undeniable pull toward him. The intruders paused, sensing something different about this pair. But before they could strike, Kaelin's voice rang out, commanding and calm. Leave this place, or face consequences you are not ready for. The figures hesitated, then melted back into the shadows. The threat was gone for now. Elara exhaled, her body trembling from relief and awe. You are not a simple traveler, she whispered, realizing the truth she had suspected. Kaelin turned to her, the first real smile crossing his face since their journey began. No, he said softly, I am not. And yet, I am grateful that you saw beyond the surface and offered me shelter. You have a courage and kindness rare in this world. That is why I trust you with my secret and my life. Her heart raced. The storm of the previous night, the shadows of the forest, the whispered danger of the hunters, all of it had brought them to this fragile moment of connection, trust, and unspoken longing. As they continued moving through the night, the forest alive with the quiet threat of danger, Elara realized that her life had irrevocably changed. She was no longer a simple peasant woman tending a cottage. She had become a companion to a man whose life carried the weight of a kingdom and the danger of enemies she could not yet see. Cliffhanger. As they paused at the edge of a moonlit clearing, Kaelin knelt to inspect the path ahead. Then he looked up at Elara, his eyes burning with intensity. There is more to your world than you know, he said, and soon, your life will be entwined with mine in ways you cannot yet imagine. Be ready, because what comes next will decide not only my fate, but yours as well. The forest around the village had grown darker, more threatening, as if the trees themselves whispered warnings of what was to come. Shadows moved with subtle purpose, and even the wind carried a chill that spoke of danger lurking just beyond sight. Elara and Kaelin had traveled for days, moving cautiously, guided by hidden paths known only to him. Yet every step forward was fraught with uncertainty, for the hunters were persistent, and the world beyond the village was unforgiving. Elara had never imagined life could be this intense. She had grown strong from daily chores and tending her garden, but nothing had prepared her for nights spent in shadowed forests, listening for every sound, relying on instinct as much as skill. Yet, despite fear, she felt a strange exhilaration in this life. Every moment she survived alongside Kaelin made her feel alive in a way her quiet days never had. Kaelin, too, had begun to notice changes in her. The peasant woman who had once seemed timid now moved with careful precision, her eyes sharp, her intuition guiding them safely past unseen dangers. Her courage impressed him, but it was her heart, her kindness, her loyalty that held him in awe. He had known many in his royal court, but few had possessed such a rare combination of strength and gentleness. At night, when they made camp beneath the sheltering boughs of the forest, they would talk quietly by the fire. He shared fragments of his life, speaking of the throne he was destined to claim, the conspiracies within the court, and the curse whispered among the royal bloodlines, an ancient magic that threatened to claim all he loved. Elara listened, her hand sometimes brushing against his as he passed her water or offered her food. Each touch carried warmth and unspoken meaning. "You do not fear me?" he asked one night, his eyes studying her face in the firelight. Elara shook her head, though her pulse quickened. "I fear the world, yes, but not you. I feel I can trust you." The corners of his mouth lifted in a faint smile, shadowed with sadness. "Trust is a dangerous thing, especially for someone like you. Once given, it can never be taken back." She looked down at the fire, feeling the weight of his words. She did not fully understand his life, yet she knew that trust was what had allowed her to shelter him, to stand by him, even in the face of danger. The following day, they approached a narrow valley shrouded in mist. It was said to be a place of spirits, where travelers often lost their way. Kaelin guided them carefully along hidden trails, explaining the magic of the forest, the unseen currents of power that ran through the land, and the importance of remaining unseen. "Elara," he said quietly as they paused near a crystal-clear stream, "you are stronger than you know. The courage you carry, it is rare in this world, rarer even than loyalty among kings." She met his gaze, her heart pounding. There was a depth in his eyes that made her feel exposed, yet cherished, as if he could see the truth of her soul. I only do what I must," she said softly, unsure of how to express the swelling emotions inside her. That evening, they were ambushed. From the shadows, figures emerged, armed and moving with deadly precision. Kaelin reacted immediately, his movements fluid and commanding. He disarmed 2 attackers with ease, the fire of skill and training burning in his eyes. Elara froze at first, her heart racing, but then instinct took over. She moved with the courage he had always seen in her, distracting one of the assailants, giving Kaelin the advantage he needed. The battle ended as suddenly as it had begun. The attackers fled into the darkness, leaving only silence and the scent of fear lingering in the air. Kaelin turned to Elara, his chest heaving from exertion, and his eyes were intense, filled with something that frightened and thrilled her all at once. "You are remarkable," he said quietly, his hand brushing against hers. I should have known that sheltering you would mean more than protection. You are..." Elara's face warmed, and she struggled to find words. I only wanted to help." "You have done more than help," he replied. "You have saved me. More than once. And now, I realize something I cannot ignore." The forest seemed to hold its breath, the trees silent witnesses to the quiet revelation between them. Elara felt her heart leap. Something unspoken passed between them, an acknowledgement of the bond that had grown in danger and trust, in shared silence and whispered conversation. Yet the world would not wait for their hearts to find peace. As they continued along the trail, Kaelin revealed the larger danger. The court had not forgotten him. The conspiracies ran deep, and powerful enemies sought to manipulate or destroy anyone who might aid him. Elara was no longer just a companion. She had become a part of a story that could determine the fate of kingdoms. "Why did you trust me?" Elara asked as they paused in a hidden glade, the moonlight filtering through the leaves. He looked at her, his expression unreadable yet full of intensity. "Because I have known many, yet few have shown true courage and loyalty. You are one of those rare souls. I would risk much to have you by my side, even if it places you in danger. See, Elara's heart ached. She felt both fear and desire, the pull of something greater than herself, and the realization that she could not turn away. Then, I will stay. With you. Whatever comes. His eyes softened, and he reached for her hand once more. The warmth of his touch burned through the chill of the night, leaving a lingering heat that neither spoke of. For a moment, the danger of the world faded, leaving only the connection between them, a bond forged in trust, courage, and something deeper, something neither fully understood. But danger was relentless. Days later, as they approached the edge of the forest, a rider appeared, cutting through the mist. He carried a letter, sealed with the emblem of the royal court. Kaelin's hand tightened on the reins, his expression darkening as he recognized the seal. Elara felt her stomach twist. "What is it?" she asked, sensing the weight of the message. He broke the seal with careful fingers, reading the words quickly. His eyes narrowed as he folded the letter. "They know where we are. They have sent instructions, naming you, Elara. You are now drawn into this world, whether you wish it or not." Her heart raced. "Me? Why would they? They are clever and cruel," Kaelin said softly. "By naming you, they seek to use you to manipulate me, to test my loyalty. But I will not allow it. You are not a pawn. You are something far more important." Elara looked at him, realizing the gravity of her new reality. She was no longer safe in the village. No longer just a woman tending a home. She had been drawn into a web of royal intrigue, danger, and destiny. And yet, she felt a fierce determination rising within her. She would face this world, not as a victim, but as a partner to the man she had come to trust and, though she could not admit it yet, care for deeply. The journey to the capital would be perilous. Every step carried the risk of discovery, betrayal, and death. Yet they moved forward, side by side, the bond between them strengthening with each shared glance, each whispered word, and each act of courage. As night fell over the land, Kaelin and Elara found a secluded place to rest. The moonlight painted the forest in silver, casting long shadows that danced like spirits among the trees. Kaelin watched her as she lay near the fire, her face illuminated by the flickering flames. He could see the strength, the fear, the hope, all in her eyes. "Elara," he whispered, leaning closer, "when we reach the capital, the world will demand more of us than it ever has. But know this, I will not allow harm to come to you. Not while I live, and when the time comes, I hope you will trust me not only with your safety, but with your heart." Her breath caught. The words, though quiet, carried a weight that echoed in her chest. She wanted to speak, to confess the longing that had grown inside her. Yet the words faltered on her lips. Instead, she nodded, understanding the promise, feeling the connection, and realizing that her life and her heart were no longer her own. Cliffhanger. As they settled into the shadows, a distant horn sounded, carried by the wind. Kaelin's eyes darkened, his hand gripping a hidden blade. "They have found us," he whispered. "We must move. Now. And Elara, stay close. This night may change everything. Forever." The distant horn had sounded again. Louder and more urgent this time, echoing across the hills and forests like a call from destiny itself. Elara's heart pounded in her chest as she adjusted the cloak around her shoulders. She glanced at Kaelin, whose eyes were sharp, his every movement precise, as if he had anticipated this moment all his life. "We must move quickly," he said quietly, his hand brushing against hers. The touch sent a spark of warmth through her, a quiet reassurance amid the fear. "Follow me exactly. One wrong step could mean everything." The forest seemed alive with tension. Every rustle of leaves, every crack of a branch, felt amplified, as though the trees themselves were watching their passage. Elara's senses were heightened, her mind alert to every sound, every movement. She had grown stronger in the days and nights of their journey. But the weight of what lay ahead, the court, the conspiracies, and the expectations pressed heavily upon her. Kalen led them through hidden paths, his knowledge of the forest guiding them past danger. The hunters had closed in, but his strategy was flawless. Yet even in the midst of danger, the bond between them had deepened. Every glance, every shared silence, carried the tension of unspoken feelings, a connection forged in trust, courage, and shared peril. Finally, they reached the edge of the forest, where the mist lifted to reveal the sprawling city beyond. The capital shone in the fading light, towers and battlements glinting, streets winding like threads of silver in the setting sun. Alara felt a mixture of awe and fear. The city was vast, a place of power and intrigue unlike anything she had known. "This is where it begins," Kalen said, his voice steady but low, full of gravity. "The palace, the court, everything is here, and everything will be tested." Alara nodded, tightening her grip on the small bundle she carried. She felt both excitement and trepidation. She had left the quiet life of her village for a path she could never have imagined. A life entwined with a man whose presence stirred her heart in ways she could barely comprehend. As they approached the gates, the palace guards stopped them. Kalen stepped forward, speaking with authority that silenced any questions. His identity as the prince, or the king, depending on the eyes watching, was clear, yet he moved with a calm assurance that left no doubt of his purpose. Inside the palace walls, the air was thick with expectation. Courtiers whispered, eyes darting, and servants hurried through the corridors carrying messages and reports. Alara felt herself shrinking slightly under the weight of attention, yet Kalen's presence steadied her. She was no longer just a peasant woman. She had become a part of this world, and her courage and loyalty had earned her a place by his side. They were led to a private chamber, away from the prying eyes of the court. Kalen turned to her, his gaze softening. "Alara, what you have done, your courage, your trust, your heart has carried me through dangers no one else could face. I need you to understand. You are more than my companion. You are my partner in all that is to come." Her chest swelled with emotion. I never imagined I could mean so much to someone like you," she whispered, her voice trembling with a mix of fear and hope. "And yet," he said, his hand finding hers once more, "you do. More than you know. Whatever the world demands, whatever danger comes, I will face it with you. Together." The days that followed were filled with preparation and uncertainty. The court was tense, aware that the king, or rather, the prince now returned, was making choices that could disrupt tradition. But Kalen was resolute, and Alara proved herself invaluable. She learned quickly, understanding the subtle dances of power, the whispers of loyalty, and the dangers of deception. As the day of the coronation approached, the palace was alive with anticipation. Nobles and dignitaries arrived from far and wide, their eyes curious, their whispers sharp. But amid the pomp and ceremony, Kalen never wavered. He remained steadfast, his attention often on Alara, whose calm strength had begun to draw the respect of all who watched. On the morning of the coronation, Alara stood at the balcony overlooking the gardens, her cloak fluttering in the soft breeze. Kalen joined her, his hand brushing lightly against hers. "You have no idea how proud I am of you," he said, his voice soft but firm. "You have faced dangers, distrust, and uncertainty with a courage that is rare in this world. Today, the world will see what I have known all along." Her heart raced. "And what is that?" "That you are not just brave," he said, meeting her gaze, "but extraordinary. And that I cannot imagine a life without you beside me." The ceremony began in the grand hall, filled with light streaming through tall windows, casting long shadows across the marble floors. Courtiers watched, the court musicians played, and the air was electric with expectation. Alara followed Kalen closely, her hand in his, her heart pounding with every step. She had entered this world uncertain and fearful, but now she walked with purpose, strength, and a quiet fire that no one could ignore. When the moment came for Kalen to take the crown, he paused, turning to Alara. The room seemed to hold its breath as he extended his hand toward her. "Will you stand with me?" he asked, his voice carrying both command and vulnerability. Alara's eyes met his, and in that moment, she understood the depth of what was being asked, not just as a queen, but as a partner, as someone who shared not only power, but heart and destiny. "I will," she said, her voice steady, carrying the courage she had cultivated in the forests, the nights of storms, and the moments of uncertainty. The crown was placed, and the ceremony continued. Yet for Alara, time seemed to slow. She felt the weight of responsibility, yes, but also the warmth of connection, the trust and bond that had grown between them through danger, shared fears, and whispered conversations by firelight. When the coronation ended, and the guests dispersed, Kaelin led her to the palace gardens. Moonlight poured over the marble statues and flowering hedges, painting the scene in silver and shadow. He turned to her, his expression soft, yet filled with intensity. "Ilara," he whispered, "what we have faced, the world will never fully understand. But I know this, my life is forever changed because of you. And I hope you know, my heart is yours, as much as I can give it." Tears filled her eyes, a mixture of relief, joy, and love. "And my heart," she said, "is yours. You showed me courage, trust, and a world I never imagined. I cannot imagine my life without you." He took her hands in his, holding them close to his chest. "Then we face the future together," he said softly. "Whatever comes, whatever dangers rise, we will face them side by side, together." The palace gardens were silent but for the soft rustle of leaves, the distant murmur of the city, and the beating of two hearts intertwined by trust, courage, and love. For the first time, Alara felt fully seen, fully valued, and fully ready to embrace the destiny that had been waiting for her all along. And yet, even in the quiet joy, the weight of the world remained. The court, the conspiracies, and the mysteries of the kingdom were not gone. But for now, in the stillness of the moonlit gardens, there was peace, connection, and a bond that would endure through every challenge that lay ahead. Cliffhanger. Emotional hook. As they stood together, hand in hand, the first light of dawn painted the palace in gold. Kaelin whispered, "The world may not understand our choices, but I would face it all again. For you." Alara smiled, feeling the pulse of destiny and desire settle around them. Their journey had just begun. But together, they knew they could face whatever shadows lay ahead.